Hey guys, tonight we're slipping into ancient sandals and heading into a place where the sun scorches, the deserts stretch endlessly, and somehow ice cream exists. Picture yourself in Persia, over 2,000 years ago. You're sweating in layered robes, wandering a city made of stone and sunshine, and someone just offered you a bowl of something cold. Not just chilidacy, sweet, fragrant. It feels like a miracle. It's not Häagen-Dazs. But hey, it doesn't melt in 5 minutes either. And yet you're in the middle of a desert. There are no freezers, no ice cream trucks jingling down the street, no soft-serve machines hiding behind golden palace walls. Just brilliant engineering, obsessive dessert lovers, and a whole empire that somehow made frozen treats part of royal life. You probably won't survive the heat, but at least you'll go out with a spoon in hand. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And, if you're listening from somewhere chilly, let me know in the comments where you are and what time it is. I promise not to send Persia's heat your way. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You trudge across a dusty path in ancient Persia, sand in your shoes and sweat clinging to your tunic. The city hums with activity, markets bustle, water jugs clink, and somewhere nearby, a storyteller is weaving tales of heroic kings and magical gardens. But your attention drifts to something more immediate, the craving for something cold. You are parched, sunburned, slightly dramatic, maybe. Incredibly, even here, in a world of clay walls and palm-shaded courtyards, there is a way to cool down. And no, it's not magic, though it might as well be. The Persians had already figured out how to make something that would eventually become a beloved universal treasure, ice cream. Of course, it didn't look exactly like what you get in a modern cone. No rainbow sprinkles. No lactose overload. Instead, you're likely to be handed a chilled bowl of tangle of rice noodles steeped in rose water, lime juice, and drizzled with syrup, served atop shaved ice. Or maybe a fruit mash frozen in the shadows of a domed ice pit. Either way, it's cold, sweet, and let's be honest, probably the only thing keeping you from turning into a human raisin right now. But how? How does one make ice in the desert? Before we get to that engineering marvel, let's pause and give ancient Persia the culinary credit it deserves. This is a civilization that didn't just dream of luxury, they built it. From fragrant stews to honey-soaked dates, Persian cuisine was always about contrast: hot and cold, sweet and sour, soft and crunchy. And somewhere along the line, someone decided that snow, yes snow, was just the thing to elevate a dessert from satisfying to divinely indulgent. What's even wilder is that this wasn't just a palace treat. Sure, the royals had the best of everything, but markets in cities like Ekbatana and Susa were known to carry basic chilled drinks or icy sweets on special occasions. You could walk into a shaded stall, exchange a few coins, and walk out with a cup of tamarind sherbet cooled with a precious chunk of harvested mountain snow. Just don't expect whipped cream on top. Here's the cheeky bit: the snow wasn't exactly local. Which brings us to the part of the story where you imagine yourself working as an ice hauler, an actual job, believe it or not. You're trudging uphill into the Zagros mountains before dawn, hoping to fill burlap sacks with snow that hasn't yet been kissed by the blazing sun. You and your fellow workers move fast, wrapping the snow in straw and cloth before loading it onto donkeys. Then comes the race against time, getting that precious cargo back to the city before it turns into a soggy disappointment. Even the logistics of it make you sweat, and not in a cute spot. They way. Still, Persians were undeterred. Ice was a symbol of power, wealth, and above all, mastery over nature. Historians still argue whether Persia or China truly invented the first cold dessert, but Persia certainly made it fashionable. Some even say Alexander the Great encountered ice delicacies during his conquests, and was so enchanted that he demanded his cooks learn how to replicate them. Which is kind of adorable if you imagine him sipping pomegranate ice like a summer tourist. Here's a quirky little detail: ice was so valuable in ancient Persia that it was often kept under guard. Royal families didn't just want it for refreshment, they used it in medicine, rituals, and even love potions. You'd hear whispers of saffron-laced snow being served to nervous brides or potentates trying to stay cool before battles. Somewhere between function and romance, ice found its place. So here you are, in a dusty city that shouldn't have ice but does. You're sipping a chilled date syrup, drink under a canvas awning, listening to gossip about a royal cook who accidentally invented something delicious. And maybe, just maybe, you're realizing that ice cream didn't start with cows and comes but with snow, syrup, and the stubborn belief that even a desert deserves dessert. You're woken by the crunch of footsteps. You're strutting up a jagged path, dawn barely cracking over the Zagros mountains. The air is sharp here, still clinging to its nighttime chill, and for once, you're not sweating. You're cold. Gratefully cold. Because today, you're one of the unsung heroes of ancient Persia, a snow gatherer. Forget royal robes or honeyed poetry. You're wrapped in goat hair cloth and trying to keep your fingers from freezing as you scoop powdery snow into thick woven sacks. Around you, a team of equally grumpy men does the same, all of you working in synchronized silence. Why? Because down in the valleys where the cities heat up like clay ovens by midday, the snow will soon become something sacred, really. The Zagros Mountains, rising like ribs along the spine of Persia, weren't just a scenic backdrop. They were the empire's secret freezer. The elevation meant snow lingered long into spring, and even summer in higher altitudes. And so, while children in the cities played with slings and walnuts, men like you hiked into the highlands to collect nature's coolest treasure. Of course, hauling snow in 40-degree heat isn't exactly glamorous. The journey back down is treacherous. You balance baskets on your mule, stuffing the snow with straw and cloth to slow the melt. The trick isn't just speed, it's insulation. You stick to shaded paths, avoid rocky shortcuts, and whisper curses at every sunbeam that dares touch your cargo. Still, there's a rhythm to this task. Snow up top, delivery below. By midday, the caravan trickles into town, where the ice is quickly stored underground, or if it's already party season, handed over to the palace cooks who are ready to turn it into something spectacular. Historians still debate whether this supply chain was officially regulated or just a well-oiled tradition. Some say it was part of the imperial food system, much like grain storage. Others think local elites just paid out of pocket to cool their sherbets. Either way, the logistics are impressive. No ice trucks. No electric refrigeration. Just donkeys, cloth, and pure determination. And here's a delightfully weird little twist: it wasn't only snow that got hauled. Sometimes it was ice, carved into slabs and stacked into crates lined with leaves and mud. In winter, special ponds were dug just outside cities to harvest ice that froze naturally overnight. That ice was then hacked into blocks, wrapped tightly, and stored until summer. Picture a secret stash of frozen slabs under sand, waiting months to be unveiled like ancient Tupperware. You make it back to town just in time to see a noblewoman fanning herself with a peacock feather while sipping from a frosted bowl. What's inside? Maybe grape juice turned to slush, or sour cherry mash chilled to a jelly. It's not just a luxury, it's status. In a society where the sun rules everything, controlling cold means power. And power tastes like rose water and apricot. Quirky fact for you: in some parts of Persia, children were given small chunks of snow wrapped in fig leaves during festivals, just for fun. Imagine their sticky fingers, and to they just proof that dessert pain is eternal. But it wasn't all indulgence. In arid lands, snow also meant medicine. Physicians used chilled water to reduce fevers or calm hysteria. Religious texts occasionally referenced snow as a purifier, something used in rituals of cleansing. You weren't just hauling dessert toppings. You were delivering holiness. Your donkey snorts, unimpressed. Still, even the laborers like you got a taste. Once the storage pits were filled, and the aristocrats had their fill, there were often leftover tiny piles of slush that couldn't be preserved. These became street vendor gold. You find yourself slipping a copper coin to a cheerful boy near the market who hands you a cup of tamarind ice. You take a sip, feel the zing on your tongue, and for just a moment you're royalty. It's ironic, isn't it? In a civilization remembered for fire temples, sun gods, and golden deserts, the most enduring symbol of pleasure might just be snow. Not snow in itself, but snow transformed. Crushed, soaked in syrup, infused with herbs. The taste of ingenuity. The taste of contrast. You brush melting droplets from your fingertips, watching the sun climb. Another day begins in Persia. Another batch of snow melts into memory. But tonight, when the city sleeps and the wind cools the rooftops, a quiet servant will reach into a clay pit, pull out a bowl chilled by mountain labor, and serve it with a spoon carved from fig wood. And you'll dream of ice. You squint against the midday glare as you step into what looks like a giant beehive rising out of the desert. No, not a temple. Not a silo. It's something far cooler, literally. This is a yakchal, Persia's ancient ice house. A word that means exactly what it sounds like: ice pit. You pause at the entrance, letting your eyes adjust. Inside, the temperature drops instantly, from sunstroke to sweater weather in seconds. The dome above is high, its walls thick, about 2 meters thick, actually made of a special mud straw sand mix called sarouge, famed for being waterproof, heat-resistant, and the kind of thing you'd wish your beach cooler was made of. You run your fingers across the cool clay as you descend into the dark belly of the yakchal. There, resting silently beneath layers of packed straw, is the reason this marvel was built: a shimmering sheet of ice. Preserved. Waiting. Untouched by the brutal heat outside. Here's the kicker: some of these yakchals were built over 2,000 years ago and they still stand. That's like storing your summer popsicles in a structure that predates the Roman Empire and still beats your kitchen freezer in energy efficiency. You hear the slow drip of condensation and realize this place isn't just storage, it's survival. In a time without electricity or artificial cooling, this was how Persians kept perishables fresh, cooled water for the sick, and most importantly preserved the luxury of chilled desserts for the elite. And thanks to the ingenious design, it worked. The magic was in the shape. The domed roof minimized solar exposure, while the underground chamber kept things cold. A narrow shaft often led to an underground caneta flowing water channel to help cool things further. And sometimes, they even built shallow freezing pools just outside the yakchal. These were filled with water on winter nights and left to freeze under the stars. Come morning, the frozen slabs were broken up and shoveled into the pit. Historians still argue whether this architecture was entirely Persian in origin or adapted from earlier Mesopotamian cooling systems. But no matter who started it, Persia perfected it. Some scholars even call yakchals the earliest form of passive refrigeration, which is a fancy way of saying cold stuff. No curds. Here's something delightfully weird: the yakchal wasn't always for ice. In some regions, it doubled as a storage unit for dates, saffron, or even documents. Basically, a desert pantry/archive/ice cream vault. You peer up at the opening in the dome vent. Not just decorative. It helps control airflow, pulling warm air out while keeping the interior chill stable. It's like someone stuck a chimney onto a snowman and accidentally invented HVAC. In the quieter moments, you start to notice the little things, the way footsteps echo gently against the curved walls, how the air has that musty, almost ancient sweetness like damp straw and thyme. If places could hum lullabies, this one would. And it's not just the technology that's impressive, it's the commitment. These yakchals weren't one-off experiments. They were part of a network. Across Persia, from Yaz to Kerman, communities built and maintained these structures season after season. It took planning, coordination, and a shared belief that yes, the desert can have ice. You imagine the workers who maintained this place patching cracks, draining meltwater, rearranging straw, probably cursing every time someone dropped a date into the snow pile. But also proud, because they were keeping the empire cool, one frozen brick at a time. Outside, the sun blazes on. But you stay a little longer in the yakchal, letting the stillness wrap around you like silk. The world outside may sweat and bustle, but here, time slows. And maybe, just maybe, the next time you bite into a scoop of pistachio gelato, a tiny part of your tongue will remember this place. And the taste will whisper, Persia got there first. The air hums with the scent of roasted lamb and pomegranate glaze. You're at Persepolis, capital of the Achaemenid Empire, and tonight is not your average dinner. It's a royal banqueton of those feasts where silk rustles louder than voices, and wine flows like the Euphrates on a good day. You snuck in, naturally. Maybe disguised as a servant. Maybe just a particularly confident guest who walked in holding a tray. No one seems to notice. The nobles are too busy adjusting their gold cuffs and eyeing one another's dessert bowls. Because here, at the heart of Persian grandeur, even the sweets demand applause. And then there it is. A servant glides past you, balancing a lacquered tray with small ceramic bowls, each gently steaming with cold mist. The contents. Not soup. Not wine. But something colder. More delicate. Crushed ice laced with cherry syrup and flecks of mint. A dessert so simple in construction, yet so dramatic in presentation. You pretend not to drool. This, friend, is what Persian royalty ate when the heat threatened their mood. And you, blessed infiltrator, are about to taste it. You take a spoonful, it crunches softly, melts instantly, the tang of fruit, and the cold shock waking your tongue. A nobleman beside you grunts in approval. Across the hall, a boy jiggles as snow dribbles down his chin. Somewhere, a poet begins composing an ode to sherbet. It's easy to forget that you're in the 5th century Bess. But the setting helps. Golden columns towering above, torchlight dancing on carved bas-reliefs of lotus blossoms, servants fluttering like doves. And somewhere, at the head of the long stone table, sits the king himself. Historians still argue whether Darius I or his son Xerxes truly had a sweet tooth or if these frozen delicacies were primarily ceremonial. Some believe that sherbet served at royal tables was used to show off imperial reach, the mountain snow, the imported spices, the golden pomegranates from distant satrapies. All proof that Persia didn't just conquer territory, it conquered temperature. But let's not get too philosophical. You're distracted by the second course, a chilled concoction of saffron and pistachio, possibly served with slivers of apricot soaked in rosewater. No dairy. No cream. But so rich in flavor that your modern palate nearly short-circuits. And here's the quirky bit, it wasn't just taste that mattered. Persian cuisine, especially at court, emphasized balance. The idea of hot and cold foods rooted in Zoroastrian, and later Unani medical systems meant that after a hot meal of roasted meats and spices, you needed a cold element to restore harmony. Ice desserts weren't just indulgence. They were, technically, medicine. Delicious, siribai, probably expensive medicine. You take another spoonful. You're practically a doctor now. From the far end of the room, you hear the faint twang of a sanjar, the melody weaving between conversations. As you follow the rhythm, a young girl offers you another bowl, this time, noodles. Wait, cold noodles. But they're soaked in lime and rose water, with a sprinkle of sugar. Yes. You just met Falade, Persia's signature chilled treat. And it's a textural masterpiece. You're tempted to ask her for the recipe, but you remember this is Persia. Recipes aren't written. They're whispered, passed between generations like sacred spells. And anyway, You're far too relaxed now to talk. Some scholars have tried reconstructing these ancient desserts based on archaeological finds and literary fragments. A few clay tablets mention fruit syrups mixed with snow, while later Persian poetry immortalizes cold drinks so vividly you can practically hear the ice clinking. Still, most historians agree that exact ingredients remain a mystery, though it's likely that things like grape must, quince, barberries, and mulberries all made their way into the icy rotation. As the night deepens, the mood shifts from formality to revelry. A young courtier tosses a date into a friend's sherbet, and is rewarded with a lemon peel to the face. You spot an elderly noble dipping a lavender petal into his dessert, sighing contentedly as he sips the infusion. You, meanwhile, lean back against a stone pillar and let the cold seep into your bones, not from winter, but from a civilization that bent summer to its will. You came here expecting history. You stayed for dessert. And you're not leaving until someone brings more falada. By now, your palate is practically royalty. You've eaten cold noodles drenched in floral syrup, slurped ice snow with saffron, and maybe snuck a second helping from a distracted noble. But how, you wonder, is all of this even possible? How do you engineer cold in a place where the sun bakes mud brick walls like they're cookies on a tray? The answer lies not in ice but in air. You wander out of the royal compound into the city beyond, where a different kind of brilliance unfolds. All around you are wind towers, tall structures jutting from rooftops like chimneys that forgot to breathe fire. These are badgers, or wind catchers, ancient Persian. Air conditioning, and a cornerstone of the empire's cooling technology. You stare up at one. It seems simple, a vertical shaft, open to the wind. But inside, clever channels funnel air downward. Sometimes it's directed over pools of water or moist surfaces. Other times, it cools entire rooms just by moving, because in this land, moving air is cool air. You step inside a home, and immediately feel the difference. Even without snow, the temperature inside is refreshingly livable. Add a bowl of icy syrup. Heaven. Badgers were often paired with canets, those underground channels that carried water from mountain springs into city reservoirs. The combination of cool airflow and groundwater created microclimates, especially in wealthier homes or palace kitchens. And sometimes, just sometimes, the spits were built nearby, feeding this entire system like nature's version of central air. Historians still argue how widespread these cooling systems were. Some suggest they were common in major cities, like Yazd and Nishapur, while others believe they remained luxuries of the elite. But archaeological digs have revealed wind catchers in everything from bakeries to bathhouses, so either way, someone was living breezy. You duck into a small workshop and spot a curious setup, a shallow basin of water under a vented roof, with long clay shelves fanned out around it. A man in a lion cap is stirring something thick and shiny in a bronze bowl syrup. Not just any syrup, mind you. This one's been simmered with grape must, reduced for hours, infused with cinnamon bark and rose petals. It smells like candied poetry. You lean in closer. He dips a wooden spoon and lets the syrup dribble over packed snow sitting in a clay bowl. It hisses faintly, then sets with a jelly-like glisten. That's your dessert, engineered by air and flavored by chemistry. The real charm of Persian frozen treats was how seamlessly they blended technology and taste. Every dessert was a little science experiment. Brush, fruit, sure, but only after it was strained through fine linen. Syrup, yes, but reduced to exact thickness. Ace, of course, but wrapped in meaning, cooling not just the body, but the spirit. Porky tidbit here. Some Persians believe that eating cold foods help sharpen the mind and calm the temper. Ancient cool heads prevail logic. So if your boss is grumpy tomorrow, maybe offer them a falada. You wander deeper into the residential district, noting how many homes have shaded courtyards. Some even have startups underground summer rooms, built to escape the worst of the heat. You imagine entire families descending into these cool spaces, sipping icy drinks while above them, the sun throws a tantrum. Suddenly you hear a ruckus, children laughing. You follow the sound to a street vendor surrounded by giddy kids. Is spinning a small wheel attached to a stone bowl, mixing snow with fruit pass. No two batches are the same. One boy slurps down a purple mess of mulberry and pomegranate. A girl is offered a cup with sour orange and date syrup. You catch his eye. He smiles, hands you a cup, and says something in Old Persian that probably translates to, "Don't be shy. This will change your life." His right. As you slurp, a soft breeze rustles the banners above. The wind catchers hum faintly. Somewhere nearby, a hidden yachtcha waits for the next load of snow. You marvel at how every part of the city plays a role in dessert: mountains, winds, mud, wells, bowls. It's not just food. It's infrastructure. So the next time someone brags about their smart fridge or triple-layered gelato, you can smile and say, yes, but does it use passive evaporative cooling via rooftop air shafts and snow harvesting logistics pioneered by 5th century engineers? Didn't think so. You wake to birdsong drifting over sun-warmed stone, and the unmistakable scent of something sweet. Not honey. Not sugar. Something deeper, earthier. You follow your nose, and find yourself outside a garden kitchen shaded by fig trees, and hemmed in by jasmine vines. Inside, bowls and baskets spill over with ingredients that feel more like treasure than groceries: dried sour cherries, bunches of spearmint, golden raisins, rose petals, and a spice so red it glows: saffron, the crown jewel of Persian flavor. In the center sits a wide bronze bowl half filled with a deep purple syrup, thick enough to coat your spoon and shimmer like lacquer. You're in the workshop of a master sherbet maker, part cook, part alchemist, part poet. And today, they're crafting cold, syrup-based drinks and frozen sweets for a midsummer gathering. You're invited to watch. And maybe, if you're lucky, to sip. The sherbet maker explains without a hint of arrogance that the Persian cuisine treats taste like a painting. It's about balance, color, temperature, and fragrance. And nowhere is that artistry more delicate than in their cold treats. You watch as the syrup is mixed with snow. Not crushed, not blended. Folded. As gently as if they were cradling secrets. The mixture starts to congeal, forming a soft slush, then takes on a glittering finish once more syrup is added, this time, laced with mus. Yes, mus. A prized ingredient harvested from deer glands, used sparingly, considered aphrodisiacal, and still hotly debated by food historians. Was it truly used in desserts? Or was it reserved for perfumes and medicine? The truth is murky. But the story? Delicious. Here's a fun aside: some ancient recipes called for violet syrup and ambergrisses, whale byproduct, as cooling agents. You're not sure how it tastes, but it smells oddly divine. Ice cream for royalty. Or at least, for those willing to take flavor risks. Your host sprinkles a few barberries on top and hands you the bowl. You taste it. The cold hits first, then the brightness of sour cherry, the floral whisper of rose, and finally a slow, warming bloom of spice. It's not a dessert, it's a revelation. Nearby, a group of servants is zesting bitter orange into another batch of syrup. The sherbet maker tells you this one will go with castor seeds, tiny brown seeds that float in water like stars in the sky. They're prized not only for their cooling effect but also as a gentle digestive. Kids slurp them, grandmothers swear by them, and yes, they're stirred into snow like confetti at a wedding. Historians still argue whether these drinks should be classified as medicinal or culinary. But to you, they're clearly both. They soothe the body and elevate the soul, especially when chilled in earthen jugs left overnight under the stars. You pause to admire the tools of the trade. Long-handled ladles, strainers made of horsehair, ceramic bottles sealed with wax. Some of these vessels are labeled with handwritten inscriptions, notes on flavor pairings, or reminders like "do not mix with melon." Apparently, certain combinations were believed to be dangerously cold in the humoral system, which balanced hot, cold, wet, and dry in both food and people. That means your pomegranate lime ice might need to be followed with a little ginger tea. Just in case. And then there are the frozen desserts meant for love. Yes, love. Aphrodisiac treats were often chilled to surprise the body into wakefulness. A platter might include cold dates filled with crushed pistachios, served beside bowls of chilled rosewater and cardamom custard. You imagine a prince nervously offering such a spread to a prospective bride and sincerely hoping she prefers tart to sweet. Porky detail time. Some poets claimed you could tell a person's temperament by their choice of syrup. Sour cherry for the bold, quince for the romantic, tamarind for the secretly bitter. Whether this was serious psychology or just court gossip dressed up as wisdom, historians are still rolling their eyes. You sip a final cup, one infused with mint and steeped saffron threads. It glows golden in the light, almost sacred. As you drink, a quiet breeze flows through the kitchen, lifting the scent of spices into the sky. And you realize, in ancient Persia, dessert wasn't the afterthought. It was the point. It's late afternoon now, and the shadow of a palace column stretches long across the sun-baked courtyard. You hear the stomp of leather sandals, the rustle of lion cloaks, the crackle of tension as couriers arrive, dust-covered and sweating, each bearing something precious. No, not battle plans. Not royal decrees. Something colder. Something sweeter. They're carrying ice. You move aside as servants rush to collect the cargo bundles wrapped in straw and burlap, dripping faintly. These weren't scooped from some nearby cellar. No, these icy parcels have traveled days, even weeks, from the northern mountains, protected like holy relics, destined for one man, Xerxes the Great. Yes, that Xerxes. Conqueror of nations. Terror of Greece. But also, a man with a famously delicate palate and a soft spot for icy apricot pure. Legend says he once stormed out of a meeting when his favorite chilled pomegranate drink arrived lukewarm. Whether that's true or not, historians still debate. It tells you all you need to know about how seriously Persia took its cold treats. They were worth transporting across vast distances, through hostile terrain, with camel guards and code words. All for dessert. You find yourself in the palace kitchens, where chaos dances with precision. The air buzzes with clanging pots, hissing steam, and shouted instructions in Old Persian. Couriers collapse onto benches, gulping water while cooks tear open the snowy parcels and rush them into a stone chamber shaded from every ray of sun. There, in the cool dark, artisans begin their work. One mashes apricots with a marble pestle, reducing them into a pulpy gold. Another grinds pistachios, mixing the fine green powder into a paste with honey and a touch of goat's milk. Over at the far end, a tall man stirs something silver in a copper pot, grape molasses infused with saffron and musk, waiting to be poured over fresh crushed ice. You peer over a cook's shoulder and see something peculiar, cold noodles again, but this time shaped into flowers. Each curl has been twisted by hand and lightly dusted with powdered sugar. They shimmer like snow-laced paddles. This isn't just food, it's sculpture. Quirky fact here, there's an entire genre of Persian poetry comparing falloty strands to a lover's tangled hair. Whether that's romantic or weird depends on how hungry you are, honestly. Suddenly, a bell sounds. The desserts are ready. Servants file in to deliver the trays, each bowl placed onto gold or lapis platters, lined with silk. And you tag along, of course. Who turns down the chance to see what an emperor eats when he's not conquering Sparta? In the royal garden, Xerxes lounges beneath a trellis of grapevines. Musicians play softly nearby, their melodies lilting like chilled wine. The trays arrive, and one by one, the desserts are unveiled: saffron snow, rosewater ice, melon cubes wrapped in fig leaves, all glistening like jewels under the sun. He picks a bowl, lifts it, and for a moment, the entire empire holds its breath. A single spoonful. A pause. The nut. The court exhales in relief. Historians still argue whether such rituals were real or dramatized over centuries of storytelling. But the logistics. Very real. Records from later dynasties describe detailed cold chains relays, shaded storage stops, even bribe systems to speed along shipments. Think of it as the ancient version of overnight express shipping, but for sherbet. You recline under a palm, sipping your own samply frozen medley of quince, lime, and black seed syrup, and wonder what your life would look like if this were your everyday snack. Probably poorer, but happier. You glance at Xerxes again. Is not shouting, not plotting, not raging against Greece. Is smiling faintly, swirling a spoon in his dessert, lost in thought. Maybe about war. Maybe about mangoes. Or maybe just maybe about how lucky he is to rule an empire that found a way to make snow fall in the desert. You're walking now not through a palace or kitchen, but along a well-worn trail stretching east to west, a ribbon of dust and promise winding through valleys and across golden plains. The sun's just beginning to rise, and a caravan is already in motion. Camels, donkeys, and ox carts creak forward under the weight of goods, silk from the east, tin from the west, spices wrapped in waxed cloth, and tucked among them, guarded like treasuries. Not much, just enough. Enough to cool syrup for a prince. Enough to make a single chilled drink for a diplomat waiting at the next stop. Enough to say, yes, the empire still works. You're tagging along on the cold trade route, a rarely mentioned but critically important system that allowed Persia to stretch luxury across impossible distances. This isn't the Silk Road, not exactly, but it intersects with it in places. And it carries something arguably more precious than silk or gold: freshness. One merchant unwraps a straw-wrapped bundle, revealing a clay pot sealed tight with beeswax. Inside, a cold syrup made from white mulberries and tamarind, meant to be mixed with shaved ice at a governor's reception 3 cities away. Another pulls out a wax-lined bag holding tiny crystals of saltbitter, an early cooling agent used in some parts of the empire to help chill liquids even without ice. Historians still argue how widely saltbitter was used in Persia. Some believe it was known mainly through Chinese or Indian trade routes and arrived in smaller quantities. Others suggest the Persians discovered its cooling effects independently. After all, they were keen observers of natural phenomena. Whatever the origin, the idea of chilling water by chemical reaction was already whispered among traveling apothecaries and curious cooks. You rest at a way station built beside a canat. The shade is thick here, and the air hums with the trickle of underground water. A vendor appears with a clay jug, is selling ice sherbet by the spoonful, charging more than you'd think. His secret: he knows when a caravan is passing through, and he knows how hot the desert gets by noon. He ladles out cups, mint lime with barberry, sour cherry with cinnamon, and something strange and floral you can't quite place. You pick that one. It tastes like crushed violets and cool river wind. It's easy to think of history as war and politics, but here on the road, it's something else: logistics. Behind every chilled bowl in a distant city is a chain of people: harvesters, haulers, insulators, cooks, vendors. No refrigerators. No shortcuts. Just human ingenuity and endurance. Here's a quirky detail. Some cities along the road had ice taxes. When shipments came through, a portion of the preserved snow or cold syrup had to be offered to local officials or priests. It wasn't bribery. It was policy. Cold was political. You watch a child trade 2 bolts of cloth for a tiny nugget of ice wrapped in fig leaves. She touches it to her lips like it's a jewel, then laughs as it melts down her chin. The sun climbs. The caravan continues. You walk past orchards where jujubes, quince, and bitter orange are being harvested, destined for syrups and jams that will travel for weeks before reaching their final flavor. Some will end up in a market in Susa, chilled over imported snow. Others will reach a banquet table in Bactria, paired with noodles and ice shards. All of them improbably, delicately will remain cold. You hear someone joke that Persia could conquer the heat better than it conquered the Greeks. You're not sure they're wrong. By evening, the caravan reaches a caravanserai. Stone walls, tall gates, shaded courtyards. A resting place. Inside, a cook has prepared dinner: flatbreads, lamb, lentils. But on the center of the table sits a bowl glistening with frozen quince jelly, topped with sugared mint. It came with the caravan. A miracle of cold in a place designed to melt dreams. You dip your spoon. And once again, Persia reminds you, temperature is power. The air feels thicker, now more humid, laced with the scent of mango and sandalwood. You're far from Persepolis, having drifted east with the caravan, and now find yourself in a muffle kitchen in the Indian subcontinent. It's centuries later, but Persia's chilly fingerprints are everywhere. You glance around. The pots are different. The spices sharper. The climate suffocating. But there it is again, unmistakable, snow. Or rather, the ghost of snow shoved ice scooped into a copper bowl, this time mixed with pureed mango, clove, and a hint of cardamom. A cook named Firoz explains, with pride and just a touch of exasperation, that his ancestors learned the art of freezing from Persian traders. They brought not just ice, but the entire idea of cold dessert as status. It's a philosophy now adapted to Indian tastes, where sweetness is dialed up, dairy starts to appear, and mango becomes king. You're watching, wide-eyed, as he prepares a variation of kulfi, an early form of dense, frozen dairy dessert that many believe evolved from Persian chilled syrups and falada. He reduces milk slowly over low heat, stirs in saffron, crushed pistachios, and yes, mango pulp. Then he pours it into metal molds, nestles them into a clay pot surrounded by ice and saltpeter, and buries the whole contraption in straw. This is science, he grins, wiping his brow. Persian style. Historians still argue whether kulfi is a direct descendant of Persian desserts or a parallel invention. But the overlap is impossible to ignore. The Mughal Empire embraced Persian culture like a second skin: its language, its poetry, and its desserts. Especially the cold ones. The result? A marriage of styles that brings together snow from the mountains, tropical fruits from the plains, and milk from sacred cows, layered like a love letter to both lands. Here's a delightful aside. Mughal princes used to compete in sherbet-making contests. Recipes were kept secret, passed only to favored chefs. One diary even notes a noble who allegedly wept after tasting his cousin's rose petal and peach slush, declaring he'd been outdone in love and dessert. And it wasn't just about flavor. These treats were served during elaborate garden feasts, where nobles lounged beneath silk canopies while servants ladled chilled mango mint syrup into gemstone cups. Ice wasn't just dessert anymore, it was theater. You recline against a marble column and sip a chilled mango sharbat while peacocks strut nearby, completely uninterested in your existential sugar high. A servant offers you another cup, this one made with coconut milk and cardamom, frozen into tiny spheres and rolled in edible silver leaf. You pop one into your mouth and feel time freeze with it. The cross-cultural fusion of Persia and India wasn't always peaceful, of course. Empires clashed, borders shifted. But through it all, the desserts endured. Because even when politics fail, mango sorbet tends to keep people talking. You wander into the palace archives and find recipes, scroll some in Persian script, others in Urdu and Sanskrit. They describe early experiments with milk ice, lists of flavor combinations, and tips for preserving texture without churning. The techniques may differ, but the spirit remains, to chase cold in a hot world. Quirky tidbit time. One Mughal doctor reportedly prescribed frozen tamarind water mixed with camphor as a remedy for heat stroke and heartbreak. Whether it were, let's just say the patient married 3 weeks later, so maybe yes. You step outside as twilight fades. The garden smells of night blooming jasmine. Musicians play soft ragas while the final course is served, rose and basil seed ice, floating in a silver dish like moonlight caught in a bowl. You close your eyes, take a bite. It's not Persian. It's not Indian. It's something new. Something between. A love story. Frozen into flavor. You open your eyes to sound louder. Music, the rhythmic clap of dancers' feet on stone. The years turned, and it's Nowruz, the Persian New Year. You find yourself in the middle of a bustling courtyard draped in lanterns and garlands, where fire crackles in braziers, water ripples in shallow pools, and the scent of hyacinths mingles with grilled lamb and sweet rice. But tonight, amidst the colored eggs and half-sin tables, the true star isn't fire, it's ice. You meander through the crowd, past jugglers, singers, fortune tellers, and kids chasing each other with handfuls of water, until you find the vendor everyone's whispering about. He's barely visible behind the crowd, but every now and then, a cone-shaped bowl gets passed back, a glistening mound of falada topped with sour cherry syrup and shaved pistachio. The bowl comes to you. You dig in. Full noodless chewy, slick with lime and rose. It's a texture you didn't know you could crave, the kind that makes you forget conversations mid-sentence. Around you, others react the same way. Closed eyes, soft sighs, sudden smiles. Cold treats were a staple of Persian festivals, and no rose was the grandest of them all. These weren't just desserts, they were part of the celebration of balance, of nature's return to equilibrium. Fire for light, water for purity, ice for clarity. Maybe joy. Or maybe just to cool you off after dancing yourself dizzy. You watch a man pour chilled pomegranate juice into little glass flutes, fizzing slightly from the addition of crushed ice. Children press against the cart, begging for Kakshir drinks, those curious brown seeds floating in icy lime water like tiny bubbles. It's refreshing, slightly earthy, and according to an old woman nearby, very good for digestion. Quirky detail. During festival season, Persian cities would sometimes set up public ice stands near temples or markets, giving out small bowls of snow topped with syrup to anyone who brought a clay cup. Democratic dessert. Of course, the best stuff still went to the elite, but at least once a year, even a beggar could taste something cold. You drift toward the edge of the square, where musicians play near a fountain. A woman offers you a slice of frozen saffron rice pudding. It's firm, just barely thawed from its overnight stay in a clay mold buried in snow. Sweetened with honey, dotted with dates and almonds, it tastes like sunlight distilled and preserved. Historians still argue whether desserts like these were reserved for special occasions or a regular treat among the urban middle class. Some accounts suggest that sherbet shops existed year-round, while others imply these delights were strictly for feasts and rituals. What's clear is that every celebration featured some element of cold sweetness, especially if it honored life, rebirth, or summer's cruel return. You join a procession dancing through the alleys. A boy hands you a frozen orange stuffed with crushed mulberries and slush. A nod to winter and summer, opposites united in fruit and frost. As he runs off, you notice his tunic bears the royal crest, perhaps a servant of a noble house, or just a clever entrepreneur cashing in on seasonal nostalgia. The night deepens. Torches flicker. A hush falls over the crowd as someone lights a tower of oil lamps. Their glow reflects in the fountains, and for a moment, everything stills. You sit on a cool stone step, your dessert melting slowly in your palm, and you think, in the empire of fire, cold is not just a relief, it's a miracle. And on nights like this, when people gather under stars and stringed instruments sing of old battles and older loves, a chilled bowl shared among friends is worth more than gold. The sun is high, and your sandals are melting. Again, you find yourself trudging along a dusty road, this time not in Persia, but in Athens, ancient, cranky, and not nearly as delicious smelling. You've come here on a whisper rumor that even the mighty Greeks once got a little envious of their eastern neighbors. And oh, did they ever. You reach the agora, where merchants bark about olives and philosophy, and in the corner, two men argue over weight. Is that ice? You inch closer. Turns out, one of them just returned from Persia. Is recounting dramatically, of course, the incredible sorbet of the Shah, and how it was colder than a Spartan's heart and sweeter than a lyre girl's lullaby. His audience doesn't know whether to be impressed or skeptical. One says it sounds like witchcraft. Another demands a sample. You smirk. Because you know, the Persians weren't doing magic. Just very clever engineering. Historians still argue how much Persian culture truly influenced Greek culinary habits. What's certain is that Alexander the Great brought home more than just war stories. Some say he became obsessed with Persian iced fruit drinks during his campaigns, and even commissioned snow to be stored in pits during his journeys. Here's a cheeky little aside. A few ancient sources claim Alexander would send soldiers back to the mountains mid-campaign just to collect snow. Imagine explaining that at roll call. But envy runs deeper than drinks. Greek writers often praised Persian luxury, even while pretending to mock it. They described elaborate banquets with golden platters, spices from unknown lands, and gold dishes in midsummer. The implication: the Persians lived better. Maybe too well. You wander into a symposium that evening. Philosophers recline on couches, sipping wine and arguing about ethics. But the servants are busy with something else, mixing crushed snow with honeyed wine, a novelty that's become popular among the elite. One guest calls it Hippocratic sherbet. Another scoffs and says it's just a Persian trick with a Greek name. You take a sip anyway. The flavors are simpler here, no saffron or mus. But the cold hits your tongue with the same shock, the same surprise that something so cool can exist in a world so relentlessly hot. And that's the heart of it. Persia didn't just invent desserts. They invented the idea that heat could be conquered with beauty. That cold didn't have to be endured, it could be enjoyed. Athenian engineers begin experimenting. There's talk of building pits like the Yakchals, though they haven't quite figured out the insulation part. One mason suggests just borrowing Persian workers. Another suggests conquering Persia again. The first idea seems more practical. Quirky detail: there's an old Greek joke that says, only a fool fights a Persian in war, better to fight them at dinner, where the battle is winnable and the desserts are colder. You stroll through the agora at night, where a vendor sells snow-infused date cakes, a clear nod to his eastern rivals. You ask him where he learned the recipe. He winks. Let's just say it came with the wind. The breeze smells like pines and pride. You lean against a marble column and think about how ideas migrate. How a dessert made in a Persian palace ends up chilled in a Greek symposium. How envy turns into imitation. And how tastereal taste knows no borders. Somewhere in the dark, a philosopher mutters, "Give me phala, or give me death." Or maybe you're imagining that. Either way, you agree. It's quiet now, no festivals, no feasts, no caravans jingling with mango-scented anticipation. You're walking through the shaded courtyard of a Persian temple, stone cool beneath your feet, incense winding lazily through the air. The air feels different here. Not cooler in temperature, but calmer. Sacred. You're here to discover something often overlooked, the spiritual and medicinal life of ice. In ancient Persia, cold wasn't just refreshing, it was healing. It was purification. It was symbolic. And while the palace might have obsessed over flavor, the temple and the infirmary had other ideas entirely. You peek inside a chamber and see a young priestess carefully pouring rose water over crushed ice, then sprinkling it with basil seeds. She places the bowl on a small altar, beside a dish of dates and a flickering oil lamp. A silent offering. The ritual isn't written down anywhere, not formally. But stories passed through oral tradition suggest that ice when mixed with floral waters was used in ceremonies tied to cleansing, mourning, and even blessings of the sick. Historians still argue whether these rituals were widespread or regional, but archaeological remnants like bowls found near ancient fire temples with mineral residues and ash point to cold's quiet role in the divine. You sit beneath a cypress tree, sipping a cup of cold anise tea made by a healer. She tells you, without blinking, that it will clear your thoughts, reduce your heat, and soothe your inner fire. She's not talking metaphorically. To her and many like her, health is a dance between hot and cold, wet and dry. Imbalance is illness. Cold, when applied correctly, is not just a treat, it's a treatment. Here's a quirky tidbit. Snow compresses were reportedly used to lower fever and calm seizures. And not just for humans, royal horses sometimes had their heads wrapped in cool cloths soaked in ice water after long rides. Cold was prestige, yes, but it was also practical. You step into what seems like a clinic. A middle-aged man lies on a woven mat, sweating and moaning. A medic gently applies a cloth soaked in water cooled from a nearby ice pit. The room smells of lavender and vinegar. There's no panic, only routine. This is how they treat fevers. Not with fire, but with snow. Another patient sips a chilled concoction of barberry juice and mint, prescribed to cool the blood. You try a sip, it puckers your face instantly, but the chill is undeniable. It tastes like restraint. Like someone trying to tame summer from the inside out. You ask about death, and they nod. In funerary rites, particularly in elite circles, cold elements were sometimes introduced to preserve the body briefly before burial. Not mummification. Not embalming, but a kind of respectful pause. A delay. A moment to breathe, grieve, and whisper final prayers while the desert held its heat at bay. Historians debate this fiercely. Was ice truly used in mortuary practices? Or are these just poetic inventions layered onto history over time? Some scholars cite early Zoroastrian texts that emphasize purity and separation of decay from the living. Ice may have offered not just cooling but a symbolic boundary. You walk outside and find a group of children drinking cold tamarind juice under a fade tree. A priest watches them, smiling. He tells you that every year, on the longest day, the temple shares cold drinks with the poor, not out of charity, but as a reminder, even the sun cannot rule without mercy. You sit beside him and drink slowly. The juice is tangy, earthy, cold enough to make you forget the heat for just a moment. And you realize, cold wasn't merely pleasure. It was power, purification, and protection. In the empire of sun and flame, even the sacred needed ice. You've wandered through palaces and temples, slurped sherbets at royal banquets, and even smuggled spoonfuls from street vendors. And now, standing at the edge of a modern museum exhibit surrounded by cracked bowls, faded scrolls, and frostless refrigeration diagrams, a question quietly rises: who really invented ice cream? The air conditioning hums like a modern canat, and your tour guide, a scholar with too many pens and the kind of glasses that fog up when he gets excited, launches into a debate that historians have been gnawing on like a half-melted popsicle for centuries. Was it the Persians with their phallidae? He begins, dramatically gesturing to a display of a 6th century ceramic bowl lined with sticky residue. Or the Chinese, with their legendary snow milk concoctions flavored with camphor. You nod, pretending you're not just here for the gift shop. He continues, the Persian claim hinges on historical references to early desserts made with mountain snow, fruit syrups, rosewater, and later on, rice noodles soaked in syrup. We're talking centuries before Rome got fancy with snow and ani mixtures. Some accounts go as far back as 500 BC, with references to royal banquets featuring sweet ices chilled in yakchals. Then there's China, where Tang dynasty records from around the 7th century describe a dessert made from buffalo milk, camphor, and rice that was cooled using saltbitter and ice mixtures. An entirely different chemistry trick, no mountain hauling required. Historians still argue whether one truly influenced the other. or if both civilizations developed their own unique take on cold sugar therapy. Some suggest indirect knowledge may have passed through trade routes like the Silk Road. Others believe the resemblance is just, well, the result of humans everywhere looking at snow and thinking, you know what this needs? Fruit and flair. You peer at a wall map. Dots mark early mentions of chilled desserts across ancient empires, Egypt, India, Greece, even pre-Columbian Mesoamerica. Each with their own version of something cold, sweet, or both. But Persia's case remains strong largely because they weren't just chilling stuff, they were obsessed with making it beautiful, balanced, and ever so slightly poetic. Here's a quirky detail. A 10th century Persian cookbook includes what might be one of the first recorded recipes for something ice cream adjacent, a blend of snow, syrup, and musk, meant to be eaten slowly under moonlight. Not a bad serving suggestion, really. You lean closer to a digital display showing cross-sections of yakchals, with animated camels delivering snow into domes while chefs stir syrup into bowls. It's almost soothing, watching this ancient choreography play out again and again. But the guide isn't done. He taps on a screen and mutters, then there's the Arab contribution. During the Islamic Golden Age, culinary knowledge exploded, and Persian desserts traveled westward. The Arabs brought with them sugar refining, spice blending, and the name, sharbat, which evolved into sorbetto, then sorbet. The etymology alone is like tracing flavor through history. Later, in Renaissance Italy, the frozen treat became more dairy-focused. Then came the French with their custards. Finally, someone in the 17th century thought, what if we added eggs and churned it like crazy? And boom, modern ice cream was born. But do you really need a churn to define invention? You glance back at the bowl in the glass case, the one with the faint stains of what might have been pomegranate syrup. A fragment of ceramic. A whisper of a dessert. And somehow, it speaks more convincingly than any textbook. So who really invented ice cream? Maybe the better question is, who first decided that winter should live inside summer? You grab your notebook and scribble down, Persia, snow syrup, poetic ambition, China, dairy, chemistry, camphor, chaos, Rome, snow. Ani smug senators, muffle, India, mango, saltpeter, stolen hearts, and then you underline Persia twice. Just for old time's sake. Because while the academic jury may still be out, your tongue and your heart know exactly who started the cold revolution. You're ankle deep in sand now, not in a palace or temple, but at the edge of an archaeological dig somewhere near Shiraz, brushing gently at what might be dessert dish from 2,000 years ago. It doesn't look like much. Just a cracked bowl, a faded stain, a faint scent of stone and time. But the excitement in the dig leader's voice tells you there's more here than meets the eye. This is it, she whispers, as if afraid the dessert spirits might overhear. This could be sticky residue from fallout. You stare. It looks like dirt. But a forensic analysis of a similar find once revealed a complex combination of tannin, sugar, and trace mineral signs of syrups like grape must or tamarind. In other words, something sweet was once here. Maybe even something cold. All across the Iranian plateau, digs have turned up little clue ceramic strainers that match the size and shape used to drain rice noodles, storage pits lined with sarouge, and hollow reed spoons that suggest something more delicate than stew. The physical evidence is rare, fragile, and hotly contested. Historians still argue whether these bowls held chilled desserts or simply fruit soaked in vinegar. But when you consider the context near a yakchal, paired with serving trays etched with floral motifs, the cold trail begins to reappear. You wander into the storage tent, where artifacts lie cataloged and labeled in soft pencil. One catch-your-breath moment, a bronze ladle shaped like a leaf, still faintly polished, believed to have been used for scoping snow. You lift it gently, its weight reassuring. Suddenly, all the stories feel real again. Poor key fact. In one village ruin, they found clay jars marked with a symbol that some believe represents snow or frost. But there's debate. Others claim it's just shorthand for water storage. The truth is blurry, like all the best legends. Yet perhaps the most telling discoveries are the ones in complete shards of serving ware burned at the edges, pottery smeared with fruit pulp that has fossilized into nothingness. It's in these absences that the mind wanders. You imagine a servant dropping a bowl while rushing to deliver it to a courtyard feast, the cold syrup lost to time, the bowl buried under centuries of dust. You pick up a piece of clay and press it to your palm, still warm from the sun. You close your eyes and hear it again louder, music, spoons clinking against bowls. You taste a flicker of rose water on your tongue. Real or imagined, it doesn't matter. The memory survives, even if the dessert doesn't. Back at the field lab, a scholar is trying to recreate what may have been inside one of the ancient bowls. Using period-accurate ingredients, dried limes, grape, syrup, mulberry paste, he freezes it in a clay mold cooled with mountain snow hauled down just for this purpose. He lets you taste the result. It's gritty, uneven, and not very sweet. It's perfect. It tastes like effort. Like hope. Like someone 2,500 years ago trying to trick the desert into surrendering, even for just a spoonful. You realize then, these desserts weren't just treats. They were acts of defiance. They said, we can make cold and heat, sweetness and bitterness, joy and survival. And though the recipes have faded, though the bowls are broken and the snow long melted, the idea persists. Passed down not just in texts or temples but in families, in festivals, in flavors that still show up across modern Iran, India, and beyond. Somewhere, a grandmother is still teaching her granddaughter how to chill sharbat in the shade. Somewhere, a boy in Yazd sells basil seed drinks on the hottest day of the year. Somewhere, someone's freezer holds store-bought falada, but the legacy is the same. Cold, sweet, fleeting and forever. Nightfall comes gently, like a whisper, draping itself across an old Persian garden. You find yourself walking slowly, quietly, beneath trellises heavy with grapevines and jasmine blossoms, moonlight painting everything silver. The soft hum of crickets blends with the murmur of water trickling through ancient channels. It's peaceful, sleepy, a world winding down. Near a small fountain, beneath a fig tree older than memory, you spot an elderly man patiently mixing something in a bronze bowl. You approach quietly, respectfully, and peer into the dish. He looks up and smiles. It's an old family recipe, he whispers, his voice gentle as moonlight. From my grandmother, and her grandmother before her. You sit beside him, intrigued. The bowl holds a delicate, shimmering mixture of crushed ice, rose syrup, and tiny flecks of lime zest. With practiced grace, he adds strands of saffron, each one placed like a whispered prayer. He hands you a spoonful. It melts softly, sweetly, and suddenly you're tasting centuries of memory, fragrant gardens, bustling markets, mountain caravans, royal banquets, forgotten temples, all in one bite. There was always something sacred about ice here, he continues softly. It taught us patience, reverence, how to savor something precious before it fades. You nod slowly, understanding now. Every spoonful is a tribute to those who came before, the ones who hauled snow from mountain peaks, who perfected wind towers and qanats, who blended syrup by moonlight. It's their legacy, preserved in ice. The garden sighs gently around you. The crickets lull you deeper into quiet thoughts. You lean back against the fountain's cool edge, watching as he carefully covers the bowl with a lion cloth. Ice melts, he whispers, standing slowly, his old joints creaking gently. Deserts vanish, empires fade. But the memory remains, passed from bowl to bowl, heart to heart. He offers a small, knowing smile and shuffles quietly away down the path, his footsteps fading into night softness. You stay seated by the fountain, eyes heavy now. The garden around you grows quiet, its beauty dissolving slowly into dreams. You can still taste rose syrup and saffron, even as the spoon slips softly from your hand. The stars wink softly overhead, their distant light cool and calming. Your breath slows, deepens, gently carrying you toward sleep. You think once more of ice and desserts, sweet miracles in ancient bowls, the fleeting beauty of things that cannot last and yet, somehow, always do. Your eyes close, your thoughts fading like ice into water, water into air, air into memory. Sleep softly now, friend, and dream sweetly of cold treats beneath desert moons.